Hey friends, how are you? Welcome to the shed. How are you today? I'm Chevee. Nice to meet you. So I forgot that there was a big mess down here. Hi. So I had to take today off work because of the car. If you watched yesterday's episode, the tire blew out on my mother-in-law's car that I've been borrowing, and I've been borrowing her car because my truck's broke, and so I had to take today off of work to get her car fixed. That's fixed now. So while I was at it, I went ahead and picked up the materials that we need to do the art project I talked about yesterday, which is going to be this Hylian shield from Legend of Zelda, some pixel art. So, check this out. I'll put the picture up. My truck's broke, and I needed a piece of plywood. Now, this is going to be 19 by 23 pixels, and I'm doing 2-inch pixels, so that comes out to 38 by 46. It's going to be a pretty big piece of wall art, for almost a little over 3 feet wide by almost 4 feet tall, plus a frame. So it'll actually be a little bigger than 3 by 4 when we're all said and done with it. And I went into the store and just like, okay, I knew I was going to get a piece of 1/4-inch plywood because I don't want to make this thing super heavy. And I had to kind of search for one that was flattish. Most of them, 1/4-inch plywood is not known for its rigidity. That's the word. So they, if it's sitting on the shelf wrong, so they were all warped to hell and back. So I pretty much just settled on finding one that was not marred up and had at least one good clean edge, preferably more than one good clean edge, because I wanted to use that as my reference edge. So it didn't, and so I just bought it. Thinking, I don't know what I was thinking, honestly. I think I was thinking that I had Jamie's car, because Jamie has a hatchback, like a Kia Soul thing. So putting a piece of plywood in there is no big deal. So I ended up buying this 4-foot wide piece of plywood, and with no way to get it in the car, I ended up having to roll it, basically. Roll a 1/4-inch piece of plywood in the parking lot. And yeah. So here it is. It's here. It's now the table surface for right this minute because I don't have any other place to put it in here. And I made this real quick. So this is a piece of the cut off from the piece of plywood. We don't need the full 4x4 because the one side's only going to be 38 inches instead of 48. So I cut off 9 inches of it, and then I ripped a small piece off of that 9-inch piece on my table saw, and so that I have one nice, hopefully you can see the shadow line. This line right here was ripped on my table saw, so I have one nice straight edge that's definitely straight. It's as straight as I care to get it. Like, I could have put it on the jointer and got a plane, or got a level and all that stuff and tried to get it, even more straight, but I don't. This is a simple table saw track for making a piece of wall art. I'm not trying to make anything special. So the way this works is piece of 1/4-inch plywood for the base, this little fence that I ripped on the table saw. This fits my circular saw. So you take your circular saw, and every circular saw has a wide side and a short side. I like to, for this particular application, you want to make sure you use the wide side because the short side's too short. The saw will do this thing, and then you'll end up having, though the line could be straight, your cut might not be at 90. It might be like this because the saw is leaning. So this is a 4-inch. I have 4 inches between the outside of my fence and the blade. And so this piece I ripped, this piece, the piece where the saw is going to ride, this is actually 4 1/4 right now because I want to cut this board, this edge, to be perfectly in line with this edge. And yeah, you could try to do that. Like if you could get, this cut's not straight, and I know that because I cut it with this old 1x12 that I had laying around. And this 1x12 is, you know, old and nasty, and so it's not straight. If you could cut that straight, then you could measure it and get it perfect. But what's easier, cut this oversize, get this cut, rip this cut. Let me get that shadow line back on here. Rip this little piece on your table saw so that you know this face is straight. And then put it, glue it on here. This is just glued on. There's no nails or anything in it. Glue it on here so that you have a little extra meat on this wide part. And then what I'll do before I use this thing, or maybe the first time I use it, when I rip it, so yeah, let me try and show you this. Essentially, do we have the shadow there? It's harder to see if you can't see the shadow. How can I make you see the shadow? Let's turn it this way. There we go. See the shadow line? So what we're going to end up doing is holding the base plate of the saw right up against that piece of wood, and that gives us a perfectly straight cut with our circular saw. And the first time we use it, we're going to use it to rip this edge perfectly parallel to this edge. Then after that, all we have to do is strike a line, lay this thing down on that line so that it's, you know, on the line or over the line, or depending on how you want the kerf to cut, and then we just, there we go. So it's basically making a circular saw and turning a circular saw into a track saw, like a really cheap version of a track saw. So the plan is, and let me know if you want to see this. I don't know if I'm going to film it or not. The plan is to take this piece of plywood, grid it out in 2-inch grids, and then I'm going to use my circular saw and set its depth really shallow, like a 1/8 of an inch, and I'll lay the track on there, and I'll just rip all these lines so that I'll end up with the pixel shapes. And then we have acrylic paint. This is just acrylic craft paint to fill in all the pixel shapes. So if you guys want to see this process, I will film it, and I'll do a project on it. It's kind of a weird thing to do because it's not really woodworking, it's not really crafting, it's kind of... I don't know, but if you want to see a project build, I'll definitely do the project build. Just using basic acrylic craft paint, and I will warn you, if you want to use basic acrylic craft paint on, this isn't cabinet grade, this isn't birch plywood, this is just regular plywood, it will soak this stuff up like glue. Like it'll just soak and soak and soak. So what I'll end up doing, after I cut the lines in it, I'll seal it with a really thinned out coat of shellac to help seal the surface. I'll also sand the hell out of it, and then I'll put the paint on, and it'll probably still take 3 or 4 coats to get it looking good. Tons of foam brushes. It's going to be done, so it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be a fun project. I was kind of hoping to involve the kids in it. The problem that I have right now is this piece of plywood is bigger than my table that's underneath. It's also not flat. So I need to put this on a floor while I do all the rip cuts. And remember when I told you that the shed was a mess? Yeah. I did some cleaning today over in this area. But on that area, I don't have my floor space that I'm used to having because there's a big pallet of games in here. So I'm going to have to make some space somewhere where I can wheel this table and drop this thing on the floor right here and do it just right here. But that's just work, and I don't mind that. So, you know. Yeah. Fun times! Art projects. Do you want to see them? Then I've got to build a frame for it and all that stuff. But I think that'll go quickly, and that'll be fun. That project, for sure, I can do, you know, maybe after I finish this. I don't know. Or maybe I'll just... I tell you what, I'll film it, and then I'll decide later if I actually want to turn it into a project or not, because the editing is usually the hardest part of this. Filming tends to make a project take like 2 to sometimes even 3 times as long, because I have to worry about all the camera angles. I have to worry about the scenes and how I film them, and whether I've got interesting enough angles or changing camera angles to keep it interesting and stuff like that. So it just adds a whole bunch of extra time to the process. And this is one of those projects that, like, put in a pair of earbuds, zip it out and I could be done with it in, you know, a couple of hours, as opposed to worrying about camera angles and this and that. So I'll just film it. I've talked myself into it. I'm gonna film it. So hopefully by sometime by the end of the weekend, we will have this completed, and I'll share it with you, and we can all marvel at its ugliness, because I'm not convinced it's going to turn out great, but I'm going to have fun with it anyway, because that's what it's all about. We're just having fun. So thank you guys, as always, for being here. It is Wednesday. I'm filming this early, so that means I'll get to go to game night on time for once, instead of having to wait for the video to load and all that stuff. And so I'm going to go play video games, but in a couple of hours, because I have time now. And I'm play board games with my friends in a couple hours. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for leaving your likes and your comments, and I really, really, really appreciate you coming back and hanging out with me each day. I'll see you tomorrow.
Hey, Doc, wait! I want to ask you something.
Today's random fact comes from theyummylife.com. Can you store onions and potatoes together? No potatoes nearby. Potatoes and onions should not be stored together. They give off gases that will accelerate the spoilage of each other. Also, no plastic bags. Don't ever store onions in plastic bags. That will accelerate sprouting and spoilage because of the lack of air circulation.